Falsely thoughts, race, life's a twisted place. No time to erase. I just keep the pace.
All right, so Yellow, how's it going, Yellow? Are you at least 18? And are you Republican, conservative, or MAGA?
Hi, I am uh, at least 18. I am none, which is why I kind of asked. I was like, does it matter if you don't agree with the prompt? It was a question I asked in the chat, and like, I'm not, but yeah. If I can't be here, I'll just drop. That's fine.
No, you could be here. I was just asking, do you agree? Do you think that Black people should be Republican, conservative, or MAGA?
I think I feel like it depends on your personal like lived experience, what you like, obviously your religion, your cultural beliefs, and just because as we know, like here in America, a lot of Black people are Christian, and Christians tend to, if not Christian, like even if you're Muslim, like I would say the two religions tend to have more conservative beliefs. But we also see that a lot of like the Black Christians in America tend to, whether like not just Black Christians, but like Black Christians and Black Muslims, they do tend to vote blue versus red. And I think they do recognize that, yes, the Republican Party shares that same religion, like those same conservative values, but also, which, like I said, whether you're Muslim or Christian, I know that obviously Black people in America are more than Christian and Muslim, but I'm only picking those two because that's the majority. So I'm just, but so Black religious people in America do see the conservative values in the Republican Party. However, the Democratic Party, the values tend to favor minority groups more. So I do understand why there are a lot of Black people who do lean to blue, but I do understand, because me being a Christian myself, I do know a lot of Black Christians. I know more who are Democrats, but I do know, and I do have friends who are MAGA. Well, they wouldn't say they're MAGA, but they voted for Trump. They are pro-Trump, and they're Black. So I get why I don't vote, me personally. I just for my own specific like religious, I don't feel that any party is representation of my Christian values, so I just don't vote. But I do know that there are people who have a problem with that, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah. I would argue this, right? I'll argue that the Democrats actually support Christian values more than the Republicans.
I see the Christian. I think that I agree. I will say, I don't know if I agree. I see both. I don't think that any party does, but I do see Christian values in the Democratic parties when it comes to, caring for those who are in need. It's a well-known fact that people always say it on the internet, which is true. It's better to be poor in the North than in the South.
Way better.
When you literally so I do see a lot of Christian values, but I do know in the Democratic Party, but I do know that for a lot of Christians who are conservative, if not Christians, even like some Muslims as well, but I'm just speaking on Christians right now. But those Black Christians who tend to be conservative, a big point of theirs is, like you said, the nuclear family and also the abortion problem.
Yeah, abortion, gay people, and nuclear family. My entire issue with that is that there are more family types out there than just the mother, father, and the children, right? Like a lot of people out there live with a single father or a single mother. A lot of people out there live with their aunts and uncles because their parents died. You know what I'm saying? So if we're saying we're going to push the nuclear family, you're forgetting about maybe 40 to 50% of families out there don't have their parents. Some parents are shitty. Yeah, I mean, some mothers and fathers aren't good. So we shouldn't push nuclear families. We should be pushing healthy families. The reason why people think the nuclear family is a lot better is mostly due to our social bias. Now, not everybody is a jerk off or an asshole, right? Yes, 2 parents in the house is good for children because the economics of that works out better. Everyone knows that, right? But the issue is that it's more tied to the economic state, because yes, single mothers are more likely to be poor. Grandparents who are retired are not going to have as much money, et cetera, et cetera. But if you have 2 parents in a household, whether that be 2 fathers or 2 mothers, if they're economically viable and they're stable people, they're going to raise healthy children. What the Democrats are saying is that these are economically viable or familial families that we can all have, and it's not just the mother, the father, and the children. No matter what the makeup of the parents are, if they're psychologically well and if they're economically well off, you're going to have a good family. And whenever I hear Christians talk about, oh, Republicans support the nuclear family, all they support is having mother, father, children. That's what they support. They don't care. They don't give a damn if the dad is abusive. They don't give the mother. Don't care if the mother's an alcoholic that gets into accident with her kids. All they want to see is mother, father, family. They don't care about the health of the family.
I could see that. Well, I can't really. Okay, so because I don't want to speak into that, just simply because I'm not gonna lie, I'm not too well versed, because I don't want to make I don't want to go off of just like my general understanding without doing further research, just because from what I've seen, when I do take out time to look into like both, when I look into the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, I think that I don't hear from either party. I won't say that the Democratic Party pushes for a healthy family per se. I think that they just are in support of all family types. And the Republican are just in support of the nuclear family, but I don't think that I've never really heard, and I could be wrong because like I said, I'm not fully well versed on this particular topic, but I don't think I've ever heard, I've never heard anyone, like any party, really emphasize the health of the parents involved, whether nuclear or single parent home. Me personally, I do obviously prefer a 2-parent home. I think most people would, but like you said, we have situations where parents die, widows, widowers. We have parents like who are abusive, or things happen, so we live in a fallen world. So we're not always going to have that 2-parent household. But I will say that something I do agree with the Republican Party is that there is I don't even think that this is just a Republican Party, but I'm just saying, because obviously this is more of their lane. I do agree with the 2-parent household, simply because, number one, it is a 2-parent household that's healthy, not just any 2-parent household, but a 2-parent household that is healthy psychologically, that's doing well economically. Even if, like, let's say your parents aren't doing well financially, 2 incomes, whether it's little, is still better than just 1 income. But yeah, I think for me, I do agree that I wouldn't say that the Democratic Party pushes more Christian values. I wouldn't say the Republican Party pushes more Christian values. I think that each party does push some form of Christian values. And obviously I'm a Black woman, so if I was to vote, I will say there's a bigger chance I would vote blue, but I know that is partly just because of programming and just my upbringing.
Here's what I would say, right? It's like when it comes to the 2-parent household and everything like that, is like nobody has an issue with that. So I'll always question, where do people get that Democrats either don't want or are against or don't care about a 2-parent household? That's just normal, regular society. Nobody has an issue with that. So
I think. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So it's like I've always kind of wondered, where do folks get that from? Not me. I'm not even really a Democrat. What I support is policies that are good for any type of family structure that you have, which is why I support things such as, universal health care, parental leave, guaranteed housing, et cetera, et cetera. And when I support like a more of an expansive welfare state, right? But when you look at the Republicans, they really don't support an expansive welfare state, such as universal health care, or parental leave, or universal education, or free lunch. There are Republicans who are against feeding kids at school. So it's like when we say, oh, they're more for the family, I'm like, what are y'all? No, they're not. They don't even want to feed kids at school. So it's like,
I think that the reason why people say that the Democratic Party is not for the nuclear family is because the Democratic Party supports LGBTQ. And a lot of people, you can't be for, so there are people who believe that you can be for the nuclear family. You can be a Democrat who is for the nuclear family and also support non-nuclear families such as like the LGBTQ. Yeah. But a lot of people don't. They're like, no, it's either if you are for the nuclear family, then you have to be anti-LGBTQ because they believe that the LGBTQ is a threat to the nuclear family.
And that's a great thing. They're not. Like they're not.
I don't know where I stand. I think I really don't. I see both. I don't, because I think it's weird. Like I will never support, and I'm just being honest, I will never support LGBTQ just because it's against my religious beliefs. However, I'm still like, I wouldn't say that, but there's this part of me where it's just like, well, I don't want to, although I will never support it, who am I to get in the way of someone else's free will?
Yeah, like, here's two things that I would say. When people say supported, what exactly do we mean by that?
So support means that like you are fine with living in a society that is okay. For example, let's say support, meaning that okay, some people believe that America, when Obama allowed, what was the law again? That the law that allowed gay marriage. I forgot the proper whatever.
He didn't pass any law about that. That went to the courts. It was Oberville v. Hodges. The courts decided that. Not Obama.
Okay, well, yeah. But during the Obama era, when gay marriage was legalized, a lot of people saw that America was supporting LGBTQ. But to me, I was like, well, America has like what happened during the Obama era was that gay marriage is now legalized prior, but America has never said like, oh, you cannot be gay. Because we know there are countries where it's like, if there is a hint of homosexual relationship,
you could go to
20
prison.
years in jail or whatever. Yeah. So I'm saying that like, so when I say support, right, I wouldn't legalize it. So let's say hypothetically, if all Americans had to vote for whether or not we wanted gay marriages to be legalized, would I vote yes or I would vote no?
Why?
I would vote no.
Why?
Because I can't give my yes but then again, I would vote no for a lot of things. It's not just LGBTQ. I would vote no for allowing stealing, allowing lying. I'm not saying.
Of course, yeah. I think those things actually cause objective harm, but being LGBTQ doesn't. Like if two people are gay, right? Like what does that do to me?
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to ask. Like if two people, like if someone rushes into my house, ties me up and steals my TV and slaps my wife, yeah, that's assault, that's a robbery. Like everybody's against that, right? But if I move into a new house and my neighbor's gay and he has a husband, what does that do?
Okay, so if I was to explain how it's dangerous, I would have to go into a whole spiel of like the spiritual danger, and I'm not trying to do that.
So that's not even gonna work. I'm an atheist, so that's not even gonna.
And that's fair, but I think like as a Christian, genuinely speaking, I do think that there is. I think that what's it called? When a society allows, I don't want to say it because it's just, I don't think this is the platform for that, but when a society allows, and I'm not saying this is just for gay marriage because this ties into other sins, but because we're speaking on gay marriage right now, I'm highlighting this particular sin. But when a society allows us, not just allows, but legalizes a sin and says like, yes, we are allowing this to not just thrive, but our entire society supports it and promotes it. That as a Christian, from my theological understanding, that gives way for other sins to begin to grow and manifest. Because like sin grows. It's not just because I believe that the reason.
So, Yellow, here's the issue. Your religion, does it control what you can do, or does it control what I can do?
My religion controls what I can do.
Yeah, it doesn't control me. So that's why the issue with voting based on your religion becomes an issue, right? Because you're trying to control everybody by your prescriptive. And I'm not saying that I'm saying you in general.
No, I get what you're understanding. Yeah,
you in general. But like when it comes to that, that's why, you know, things like gay marriage had to be making it illegal, had to be turned over, because they were doing it on a religious basis, and governments can't do that. But the second thing is just living in a society where, you know, your your religious prescription, it rules over society, is automatically going to violate human rights, and it does that every single time. We see that in every country where the religion rules over the governance, what society does. We see that it violates human rights all the time. Like, for example, if you're going to say that we're going to make all sins, if, let's say, if a society allows sins to happen, that allows more sins to happen, etc., etc. All right, cool. If is sex before marriage a sin then?
Yeah, it's 100%.
Right. So we should make that. We should make clubs illegal.
I do. Well, I will say this. To be honest, I wouldn't be against that. And I guess I am someone who I've gone to the club. That was one of my favorite places to go. But I will say I can understand why. Let's say in America, I think it's different, right? So, which is why I said to you earlier, although I have my Christian beliefs, I feel wrong having, like, I don't want to impose my beliefs on anyone. So that is a struggle that I have. But I also I'm not going to water down my beliefs because people are.
You don't have to water down your beliefs. That's fine. What I'm saying is that your beliefs can't rule society. It's going to violate human rights. If you make nightclubs illegal, you just made the right to assembly illegal. You know what I'm saying? And if we make the right to assembly illegal, we can make speech illegal too. Yeah, you know I mean, like, what if I say, okay, I don't believe in the Bible. I don't give a shit about God. That would be illegal if we take what you're saying to the logical conclusion. You see where that becomes a problem, right?
I see where it becomes but I also have to ask you, right? So when we have these, so in these type of conversations, a lot of countries, let's say, and I don't believe this personally, just because of the way this country was founded, but there are a lot of Americans who believe that America was founded on Christian principles, right? So, and because I don't personally, because I have my grievances with how this country was founded, but when we look at the beginning, like when we look at the early Christian settlers, historians would consider them to be quote unquote Christians.
Yeah.
So now you have to ask yourself, like, but these were the same Christians who also gave leeway for other religions to exist in the society, you know, for people to have freedom of speech and so on and so forth. So we've seen that in Christian societies, there are people who are non-Christians are still given more liberty than than other countries who aren't Christian.
But the thing is, like, America is a Christian country in demographics. It's not a different country by law or by, like, right or by constitution. Yeah, the people who started the country were either mostly Christian or they were deists, right? Like, they believe in some sort of God. But the country was founded on Enlightenment principles and the Magna Carta. Yeah, I mean, like, limiting government scope and Enlightenment principles such as we're all born equal, no matter who you are, what you are. And of course, the founders didn't believe in that because people who look like us weren't equal to them. But that's what Enlightenment principles are supposed to tell you. So it's not exactly like we're a Christian nation just by demographics. If we're a Christian nation by law, we will look way more like Saudi Arabia. You see what I mean? Because if that was the case, a lot of the things that are illegal in Saudi Arabia would also be illegal here because they're sins. Yeah, I mean, the same thing Saudi Arabia does. They make things that are haram, which is sin in Arabic, as illegal. You see what I'm saying? So it would be the same thing in America if we were a Christian society by law. But in the West, we figured out a long time ago that the church ruling society was a problem, right? It was extremely problematic, which is why a lot of the European countries like changed over after the Protestant Reformation. But when the Catholic Church ruled over Europe, it was a huge issue. Even like in modern times during the Atlantic slave trade, the Catholic Church still ruled over Europe, and they even said that that slavery was all good and well as long as they were heathens. All that becomes a problem. That's what I'm saying. Like, you automatically violate equal rights the moment you become a theocracy, which is what the founding fathers, at least they knew shouldn't happen. You see what I mean?
I see what you're saying, but this is my rebuttal, right? So yes, because obviously history does teach us that the Europeans, yes, although they were Christians, a lot of them were in support of slavery, but there were also a lot of European Christians who were against slavery, who actually spoke out and, who were the ones who pushed to abolish slavery. So we also see that, and even, okay, let's use the UK, right? The UK no longer is ruled by the church, but one of the biggest denominations in this world, which is the Anglican denomination, which is from the Church of England, still has great influence in not just the UK, but which still has great influence in the UK and in the United Kingdom, where it's a majority Christian society, because the church once ruled that society. A lot of the British laws were created because from biblical beliefs, right? But that's also still the same society that allows Muslims to come and practice freely, that allows people LGBTQ to come and live there and not be persecuted. So we can't necessarily compare them to Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia, for example, like, you can't even be a practicing Christian in Saudi Arabia. You can be a practicing Christian. I mean, you could be a practicing Muslim in the places like the UK and places like America. So it's like, we can't. So, because I'm saying this because I think that sometimes I'm not going to sit here and deny that Christianity has a very muddied water past, as it should be, because there are humans involved. Where there are humans involved, you will see problems. You will see, a lot of hypocrisy and just wickedness and evilness. And it's unfortunate, but that's the state of mankind. Right. What I'm trying to say here is that living in a Christian country, it doesn't mean that I think that, because to be a believer also is to also give way and liberty for other non-believers.
I mean, here's what I would say to that, right? Because again, when it comes to the UK, they're not really ruled by the Anglican Church. They're ruled by the Magna Carta too. You know what I mean? That's where we got it from. We got the Magna Carta from the UK. Yeah, I mean, and the Magna Carta is the one that puts separation of powers and limited scope of the government. You see, you see what I mean? And not only that, it's a constitutional monarchy where the monarch is basically just a figurehead. They're the leader of the church too, but they're literally just a figurehead. They don't have really that much power. Like, the king can't dissolve parliament anytime he wants. They have to follow certain laws and stuff like that. They still have to follow a constitution. They still have to follow the Magna Carta. So there's still separation of powers. When you get to a point in a society where the power of the church or the power of the religion and the power of the government are one and the same, you're always going to violate human rights. And the Christian society that we're talking about, the majority of them separate that power. When we did have a time when the powers were one and the same, it became a problem. And even now, even in countries where the powers are not supposed to be one and the same, but religion has a heavy influence, we still see violations of human rights. Like you brought up, you see in other countries where, being gay or gay marriage or anything like that, gay marriage is illegal, or being gay can get you put in jail. That was recently a law passed in, I think, Senegal and Uganda as well. Senegal and Uganda technically are not theocracies, right? There's a separation of powers there. But because those countries are heavily Christian and heavily Muslim, they said that we're going to make being gay illegal because it's against our culture, against our religion. And these are religions that were started outside of Africa. Nothing to do with Africa. But it's but because these countries are now heavily Christian, heavily Muslim, even though their government is supposed to be secular, the religion rules more of governance than it should. And now we have people making that if you're caught being gay, if someone kills you, no one's going to send that person to jail. You see what I'm saying? So like, that's the issue that I have with religiosity ruling so much over a society. You're going to violate human rights, and it happens all the time. This is not something that's just Christian or Islam too. Over in Myanmar, they're a majority Buddhist country, right? And Buddhism is basically, Myanmar is basically a Buddhist theocracy. They're committing a genocide right now on the Rohingya people. And the Rohingya people are mostly Muslim. And a genocide is happening over there. But they're Buddhist. It's a Buddhist theocracy. You know what I'm saying? So like every single time this happens, they automatically violate human rights. It's the same thing in Japan. Japan back in the imperial age, imperial Japan back during World War II was technically a Shinto theocracy. And look at what they did to the Chinese. Like every theocracy always violates human rights, always. You know what I mean?
But then again, look at China right now. China is literally the face of a non-religious society, and it's prospering, but China violates human rights.
Yeah, of course. Like authoritarianism is going to violate human rights. I don't think anybody disagrees with that, right? Theocracies, however, like authoritarianism and theocracies are basically authoritarian, to tell you the truth, but authoritarianism is always going to violate human rights. And I don't see a case where a theocracy cannot be authoritarian. It always is going to be.
But sorry, go ahead. I'll go on mute.
I just want to say, I think what people have a hard time understanding is that basically it's that like the intoxicating feeling of like something that sounds good, right? Like the people give you all kind of ideas that sound good, but then when it actually comes into practice, like you see all the flaws. Like having a theocratic government sounds good if you're into the religion. It sounds really bad when you're not into the religion, you know. And like, I guess my whole point is like, can you see any future or any way that a theocratic regime could backfire on you personally?
Oh, you want me to answer that?
Yes.
Well, if it's a non-Christian state, then yes, it would backfire. Like if I was,
I'm talking about a Christian, like one that you agree with, like a Christian theocracy, or rather they claim it's Christian, rather to be more accurate. Yeah, like something that it sounds good to you, like, oh wow, like that can your future, not future, I mean your like another universe where the theocratic theocracy, right, that's based on a religion or a sect of the religion that you agree with, can you foresee those rules being used against you?
Well, yes and no. I would say that would I prefer that? Yes. Because I wouldn't mind living in a country that is ruled by the church. But I will say, is there potential for that society to one day, let's say, backfire? Definitely. I think that whenever humans are in charge, whether it's a religious society or a non-religious, whether it is theocracy or secular, it's going to, when a person is, we are human. So it's like, I don't expect perfection, but do I think that would I prefer society that is ruled by Christian values? Yes, because I'm a Christian. But I do know that if you're not a Christian, if you're a Muslim, Hindu, atheist, then no, that type of society doesn't work well for you. It's not aligned with your life. If anything, it is oppressive. So I wouldn't expect a non-Christian to adhere to, the rules of Christianity. But yes, I would prefer it. I don't think it could I wouldn't be shocked if it backfired, but I will say I do believe the pros outweigh the cons. But I'm also mentally prepared for the cons too.
What are the pros?
The pros would just be living a life that is aligned with my being, because my entire person, like the reason, like my life is governed by my Christian faith. And it's not to say that I don't sin. It's not to say that I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm saying that like my convictions, what I believe is right and wrong, is all governed by by the Bible. Like
right.
That's what I live my life by.
I understand that, right? But here's a problem. Do all Christians have the same interpretation of the Bible?
No, but let me say this. What makes the core tenet to what makes someone a Christian is the belief in Jesus Christ being God.
Yeah. So yes. Here's the problem. Someone can believe that Jesus Christ rose from the dead and accept him as his Lord and personal Savior and still be a member of the KKK. That's a problem,
Yes,
isn't it?
well, I will say this. Well, I will, and I know there are people who like to argue me. I don't think that you can be an active member of the KKK and say that you are filled with the Holy Spirit.
Why not?
You can say that because the whole, like, you can't be a true Holy Spirit filled Christian and be part of a group that actively hates and suppress and looks not just to suppress, but wants to kill those who are different from them. That's not a feeling that is produced. That's not a, like, those aren't aligned with biblical values.
Mhm.
Like,
Right.
it's not.
So here's one thing I want to point out. When the original KKK happened, right? The reason what they believe is that they believe that God ordained white people to rule over black people, and if black people are trying to not be ruled over, they're breaking God's order, and they're being sinful, and that needs to be punished. So that's what they believed, right? And the punishment for that was lynchings and killing them. That's what they believed, because that's how it was done in basically the Old Testament. That's how they interpreted the world through their biblical lens. Because when you brought up to them the verse that Jesus said about loving your neighbor, you know what they said? You're not my neighbor. You see what I'm saying? So this is the issue that we have. Jesus, as far as I know, has never come back in these 2,000 years and says that no, this interpretation is correct and that interpretation is incorrect. So everybody's going off their interpretation. What I'm afraid of if we were to have a theocracy in this country, it'll automatically re-enslave black people. I know it would. And the reason why I know it would is because I'm going to suggest a book to you to read. It's called The Religion of Whiteness, right? The way that white Christians view Christianity is not the same way that we view Christianity. We view Christianity as altruistic. They don't. They view it as a form of racial hierarchy. Yeah, I mean, so I would suggest you that to read that book. And reading that book is what really convinced me to say that if we were to, that this is why what made me so nervous about Christian nationalism, because Christian nationalism in this country is very, very much white led. You know what I mean? It's very, very much white led. So if that's the case, if they're able to take over this country and make it a Christian nationalist state like they wanted to, they're gonna re-enslave us, like automatically.
But then again, we also will say this: I don't want to harp on that because I don't think we'll agree. So that I don't want to waste your time going back and forth. Mm-hmm. But to the point of like Christian nationalism, one of the main groups that speak out against Christian nationalism are other Christians.
Other Christians. No, I agree.
You know, so it's like we can easily see when people are weaponizing and distorting doctrine and are using the Bible to justify their wicked deeds. And Christians, more than before anyone else calls it out, we call it out. Even for like, so I think for us, I mean, so for people to say that like, oh, well, you know, because I will say Christian nationalism is a problem. Like, I think that, I don't like, to be honest, I think Christian nationalism is borderline demonic because it's idolatry of America. And I don't believe in the notion that America is God's chosen country and that this is, God isn't like, whatever. I'm not going to go too deep into all that. But yeah, so I don't adhere to that. And I know millions of Christians in America do not adhere to that as well.
I agree. I agree. The thing is, once you say that you wouldn't mind living in a Christian theocratic state, that's exactly what Christian nationalists say as well, that they want to live in a Christian theocratic state. But you both have different versions of that Christianity. And that's why like having a theocratic state, or someone says that they support a theocratic state, is extremely concerning to a lot of people, because which Christianity are you talking about? Are you talking about the hippie Jesus love everyone Christianity? Or are you talking about Republican Jim Crow Christianity? You know what I mean? And the one that's popular right now amongst the biggest demographic in this country is Jim Crow Christianity. You know what I mean? It's not yours. So it's like if every Christian was like you, I think we'll probably be fine, except for the LGBTQ stuff. But that's not what majority of the biggest demographic in this country is. They're not, hippie Jesus Christianity. We're gonna control the blacks Christianity. That's what they are.
I'm not gonna disagree or agree with that. I think that I wouldn't, because I've been around because I once held not the exact same beliefs, but somewhat similar. I had some, you know, I used to once spew the same rhetoric about my white brothers and sisters, but over the past few years, my mind has changed as being more in their community. And it's not to say that but I've learned that there are a lot of white Christians who don't have that mindset. But unfortunately, the ones who do have that mindset are louder. And those are the ones who are so in the public space. Yes, thank you. I was going to say the empower. Because of the Christians who don't have, the white Christians who don't see things like that, unfortunately, we don't really get to not saying we, but like the general public doesn't really hear much from them. It's not that they're not speaking, but their voices are really like just muted. So I say that because I think that a lot of the liberties that we enjoy, and not just in the Western world, but even in like African and Asian and in Central America, like the liberties that we enjoy in these nations are tied to the fact that a lot of these nations are filled with predominantly Christians. Like, as someone who is, because it's like, I can't think of, okay, for example, yes, we do have other nations, because majority of the world is either like, if they're not Christian, then they're Muslims. And obviously then we have like other religions, Hindu, Buddhism, and all that. But a lot of the nations that we love to travel to and explore are filled with, even if their countries aren't a Christian nation by law, it is a country that is filled with majority Christians, meaning that those Christians tend to have a lot of influence in the laws that are approved in their land. So we are getting to experience.
Sorry about that. Let me ask you a question. How did all those countries even become Christian in the first place?
Through the let's be honest, colonialism. Yeah, let's
exactly. So they became, so these countries aren't the way that they are because of Christian. In my view, they're not that way because of Christianity. They're that way in spite of it.
Well, I wouldn't say this, right? And I didn't want to touch on this because it's just, I didn't think it was useful. However, there is correct me if I'm wrong, but do you have the belief that Christianity is a white man's religion and they spread it to us?
Yeah, it started in the Middle East, but it's definitely a white man's religion now.
I don't believe that Christianity is a white man's religion. I think that there is history that backs that up, that Christianity was Christian. We agree Christianity was started in the Middle East. And then we also see, which is, I do think that this is God's doing. There's a reason he preserved Ethiopia to show that Christianity was always Christian. Ethiopia has the oldest Bible in the world. Like
the oldest Bible.
Hey, we're not doing that. No, we're not doing that. We're not doing that.
We're not doing what?
Nope.
The oldest Bible is actually the Codex Sinaiticus, which is in Greek. What I was saying is that Christianity was in Ethiopia, et cetera, et cetera. All that is good and well, but the reason why I say that's a white man's religion is because we have to look at what's actually under control, right? Who actually the seat of basically theology, spirituality, philosophy, all the denominations that most Black people follow, all came from Europe. It all came from white men, right? The biggest, the biggest, like for example, denomination of Black people is Church of God in Christ. Yeah, I mean, and that came from Church of God, and that came from the Baptists, which came from white people.
Which Black people? Black people in America?
Black people in America, yeah. The biggest denomination is Church of God in Christ. Yeah, I mean, so it's like when we look at all the denominations, all the theology, all the spirituality, the philosophy, who was it written by, et cetera, who controls the finances, it's all centered around Europe. They're the ones who control it now. Yeah, I mean, now we can say that, Black liberation theology is a Black denomination that's indigenously Black, and I would agree. They interpret Christianity through the lens of Black liberation. That's fine. Yeah, I mean, I don't have an issue with that. I don't have even an issue with Ethiopian Orthodox. I don't have an issue with that because that's an indigenous Black thing. I don't have an issue with revivalism. Revivalism comes from Jamaica. I don't have an issue with that. Voodoo is a syncretic religion. My grandmother was a voodooist. Yeah, I mean, she voodoo synchronizes the old African religion with Christianity. It synchronizes them both. And Jesus is just one of the other spirits with all the other ancestors. You see what I'm saying? So like you'll even see voodooists pray to Jesus to send that message to where he's supposed to send it to, or they'll pray to another spirit that sends that spirit where it's supposed to go to. You know what I'm saying? So that's what that's what voodoo is. So if it was like that, if majority of black people were those, then I would say, okay, whatever, we don't have to worry about it. But the majority of black people are not that. Majority of black people are not Ethiopian Orthodox. Majority of black people are not some indigenous denomination. We follow the denominations that were instituted by white people. You see what I'm saying? So at the moment, the control, the finance, the spirituality, the theology, almost everything that people preach nowadays came from white folks. You know what I'm saying? So it's really their religion.
And that's why I said we're not doing that. Not to like discredit you, but it's a really big misrepresentation of like how black people today look at the religion, how we follow the religion, just everything. I feel like Ethiopia has been like a long-standing like cop-out, even though Ethiopia was converted as well. But I feel like people go to that because it kind of confirms your own confirmation bias about it not being a white man's religion. And it doesn't hold up when you actually like go through the history of it.
I personally, because I have also, well, I'm not going to go so deep into my life, but and I want to also say this, right? So I think it's fine I think it's interesting when people are quick to say Christianity is a white man's religion, right? Because the denominations that we practice today are white denominations. But it's like the white Europeans got that from the Middle Easterns that are right. And mind you, when you read the Bible, the Egyptians walked from the Israelites walked from Egypt to Canaan. Like what a lot of people don't understand is how close like the Middle East and the African continent is.
Very close.
So it's like to the point where we can literally walk over there. Like it's a walkable distance. So with that being said, I think it's kind of funny that people give credits to Christianity, to white people, whereas people don't sit there and think, okay, well, they gave it to black people, but who did the white Christians get it from?
They got it from ancient Palestinians. Yeah, exactly. They got it from Middle Eastern people.
And but wait, also those Middle Eastern people, keep in mind, they're still around. Like they still practice Christianity. Lebanon is still there. There are millions of Christians in the Middle East that have never left the Middle East, and they're still Christians. It's not ever like the Middle East doesn't even have the highest population of Islam of Muslims. It's actually Asia does. Asia has the highest population of Muslims, but that's neither here nor there. So it's like when people say that, oh, Christianity is a white man's religion, it's like, okay, so the people in the Middle East who are the originators of this religion, so not the originators, but the people who are the first Christians, right? That whatever. And they're still around and they still practice it and they still have their ancient beliefs. So where is it? So no one ever sits there and think, oh, maybe the denominations that the Europeans spread over the world, they got that from the Middle Eastern people.
But they didn't.
So it's like, in order to say that Christianity is a white man's religion, is to say that the Christians in the Middle East no longer exist, and they do.
We're not saying that the Christians in the Middle East no longer exist. We're saying that the way Christianity looks today, it is a white man's religion because, again, the denominations like Middle East, Arab Christians and Lebanese Christians, none of them is Methodist. You know what I'm saying? That came from Europe. Like they're not Lutheran, they're not Catholic. That came from Europe. The majority of the Christian world, at least a little bit more than half of it, is Catholic. You know what I'm saying?
Okay,
so
but my thing is when you see the old Catholic, like let's say like the older churches, like the Catholic Church, the Anglican Church, the Methodist Church, you see a lot of like their rituals, their liturgy. You see the similarities in the way they carry out their services with the Orthodox Middle Eastern churches. So although like I said, what makes someone a Christian? It's the core tenet in the belief in the gospel.
Wait, hold on. Quick question. Didn't Orthodoxy come from Greece?
Okay, isn't Greece right next to the Middle East? Is it like literally right next to the Middle East? When you look at people from,
but
yeah,
they're not Middle Eastern, so.
But there are different orthodoxies. It's not just Greek. There are several different Orthodox Christian denominations. It's not just one.
Yeah, like the Ethiopians. Yeah, I got
yeah,
you.
so
No, I got you. I understand all that, right? But we're just saying that we know where it originated from. Like I definitely 100% agree with you. It originated from the Middle East, but the way it looks today and the way it spreads and operates today is definitely a white religion.
I think that it has a white face, but I also think that there are a lot of things that have white face. Like something can have a white face. It doesn't mean that it's not real. So the face, so everyone's looking at, oh, well, this can't be the real thing because the people who represent Christianity today are whites. So then it's not real. But okay, when we pull back the veil and look past the white Christians, what do we find? Christians who aren't white and who have been practicing Christianity longer than white people have.
No, we definitely agree there, but again, how exactly does it operate and who controls it right now?
I will say this, right? Yes, I do understand why there is, yes, I understand the general belief that white people control Christianity. I'm not disputing that. I understand it. I think anyone with two eyes will understand. What I'm saying is that we need to peel back the layers, right? Like, that's the thing. It's not just staying on the surface. On the surface, yes, white people do. Like the version of Christianity that was spread out was done by white people. It was. But also what a lot of people forget is the fact, going back to the fact that the Middle East is right next to Africa. And this is kind of like my frustration a little bit with like when I have these conversations is, okay, for example, unfortunately, we know the Middle East has been at war for decades now. And there was a point, my date could be wrong, so fact check me on this, but they're one of the many wars that has happened in the Middle East. A lot of Lebanese Christians sought refuge in Africa. So like there has always been a direct connection to the Africans and people in the Middle East. So we've always think about it. Why would the Middle Eastern Christians run to the African continent for refuge? Because that's right something there. We've always done. Exactly. It's right there. So when people say that, oh, well, Africans didn't know Christianity until the white men, I was like, well, that doesn't make sense because the people who were the first Christians are closer to us, and we've had more interactions with them than we had with the white. So the
noticeable difference in when it comes to Christianity in Africa is Ethiopia. I think everybody knows that Ethiopia was the one that got it first. They became Christian first. They started one of the first Christian churches, et cetera, et cetera. Ethiopia is the holdout. But where are we from? Because if I'm not mistaken, you're an Ethiopian. I'm not Ethiopian. Trill isn't. None of us are Ethiopian. You know what I'm saying? So we're descended from Western and Central Africa. How did they get it? And then how did the majority of everybody else get it? They got through colonialism and slavery. They got it through the white man. So yeah, if a white person comes to your shores and they're forcing you to convert to this religion, and it's like, yeah, this is theirs. That's their religion. Because we was doing something else over in Africa. We was doing Orisha, Bakanga, Voodoo. We're doing something else. We wasn't doing Christianity.
And I have a question, right? Where do you think that? Because where do you think? So when we practice, because I am. How do you think that worked out for us? Just asking. When Africans, when we were practicing like voodoo and all that,
it worked out fine.
How do you think
it was working out fine? But the reason why Africa is the way it is today is because colonialism. That's because people were doing voodoo.
I think it's a mix. As an African, I'm legit Nigerian, so I can speak on this. And my family, we're on my dad's side. So my dad's dad, we're only 2 generations in. My family were once idol worshipers. My family had an entire shrine and everything. Legit, my grandfather was next in line to be the priest of our whatever. That's a long story. But I'm saying this because my grandfather came to Christianity through a actual through a missionary.
Missionary.
So this isn't I'm not reading from history books. This is a direct family experience. He's the first Christian in his lineage. And my grandfather died in the early 2000s. But anyway, so what I'm saying here is I have family members who once practiced legitimately, once practiced voodoo, as not just practice, we were leaders. We have a shrine. People would come to us to interact with the gods.
Mm-hmm.
And what they've told me, and it's not like anyone and that's what people have to remember. Like, my grandfather wasn't forced to be a Christian.
He converted.
He met a missionary. Yeah, it was something he chose to do. Like, he met a missionary who shared the gospel with him, and somewhere along the line, he had an encounter with Christ and he accepted Christ. That was it. So I think a lot of times the West pushes, the people make it seem like, oh, do we have that? Like, there's this weird notion that, they forced Christianity down everyone's throat. Or is there some truth to that? Yes. But there's also the fact that there are a lot of people who willingly accepted it. And it wasn't like they were introduced to it, and after a few years, they had their own encounter with Christ and became Christians.
Right. No, I don't think anybody disagrees with that, right? I think everybody agrees that there were people who legitimately converted. That's fine. There are people who did legitimately convert. But under colonialism, what exactly happened? Because before colonialism happened, remember, we met the Europeans in the 1300s. They didn't colonize Africa all the way into the 1800s. For that entire time, African traditional religion was still the majority religion on the continent of Africa. Then after the 1830s, after the scramble for Africa, that's when we see Christianity and Islam become more of the prominent religions in Africa. But this happened in the 1830s. Why do you think that will be the case? For 400 years, African traditional religion still rules over the continent, but after the scramble for Africa in the 1830s, suddenly Christianity becomes the majority religion. What do you think happened there? Do you think they all just gave up? And because there was missionaries going to Africa for 400 years, there were still missionaries going there. Yeah, I mean, so when we look at this, right, for 400 years, missionaries are always going to Africa. We're always having these interactions, but all the way in the 1830s, when these nations are in chaos and everything like that, and Europeans see their chance to take over, and they finally take over, and then African traditional religion declines and Christianity takes over, do you think that was all just conversion, or was there a lot of force involved?
I will say yes. I do think that there was forceful conversion, 100%. But I will say, as a believer, a forceful conversion, if you act like according to the Bible, is not a true conversion. But I do get what you're saying, like conversion as in like whether they had, like, even if they didn't accept Christ, they had to pretend just so that they could live. So I'm not going to deny that. Yes, that is a real thing. But also, what a lot of people don't understand is, like, when I was studying the history of Christianity in Nigeria, and this, I think the reason I have to say this is because, like, the way the West tells this story is it makes it seem like Africans are very, like, docile and they just, like, laid back and accepted it. No, like, even when the missionaries, like, this is part of Nigerian history, the part, like, the Nigerians who were Christians were the ones who also said, like, yes, they still fought to preserve their cultural practice. So it's not even like I think that's the problem. People make it seem like once Africans accepted Christianity, we just said goodbye to our ancestral practices or our cultural beliefs. No, like, we still practice it till this day. Like, I can show you a video of a Catholic priest, literally probably like 2 weeks ago, maybe like a month ago, of him saying, no, like, this is our culture. Like, this has been in our culture for hundreds and thousands of years. We're not going to stop it. But, like, we've learned because the problem is people have this belief that God is coming to wipe away your culture. No, like, there are, like, when you look at how do I put it? When you look at the spread of Christianity worldwide, well, let me speak for Africa. I can't speak for anywhere else, so I'm not going to say that. But on the African continent, Africa has preserved our culture regardless of Christianity. And we fought to preserve our culture. Like, we fought to make sure that, like, yes, we accept the one true living God of the Bible, but we also love who we are. We love our identity. We love our language. It's why we can speak English and also still speak our tribal languages. Now, obviously, don't get me wrong, have there been parts of it that have been lost? Yes, but that could also just be due to time and modernization and many other things, and colonialism and the wars and so many other factors. It's not just religion. But I say this because when the West tells the story, it makes it seem like Africans are weak and docile and just lay down and accepted whatever. No, like we have been fighting and we've never stopped fighting.
Right.
We've always fought the truth.
Right. I fight against the notion that Africans are just these weak, docile people as well. Right. I don't think that that's the case. But it's also the case that a lot of the spiritual heritage has been lost, because you just said that they were idol worshipers, or they were worshipers of other gods. What happened to all that? All of that spirituality? What exactly happened to it? Is it now demonic?
Yeah, me personally, yes, I would call demonic 1,000%.
That's the problem for me. That's what I mean. But then you gave up your grandfather gave up his entire spiritual heritage to follow some foreign guy. Like, Jesus got nothing to do with us.
Well, you know what? I can see why you see it like that. But guess what? The good news is for you is that there are millions of Africans who still practice that. Right now, there are there are people who still practice this.
Of course. But Christianity is still the number one dominant religion in Africa, and people decide their interactions with the world and with politics through the lens of Christianity.
Yes, you're right. You are right.
And this is a foreign religion that has nothing to do with us.
Well, it has. Well, I will say for you, because I'm going to say yes for you. For me, I think that it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. And it's not because people are like, well, how is it the best thing ever happened to you if you lost your way of life? No, because it's the best that's ever happened to me, because I have family members who've been on the other side, who've been on the Christian side, and say, for example, when my grandfather became a Christian, he had to leave his home. Like he ran away because, long story short, they told him if he was to come back, the gods, our ancestral gods, would kill him. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, we have seen, and that's why when you go to like a lot of African churches, it looks different than the Western churches, because like we see the men, like I have cousins, like direct cousins, who were initiated into these ancestral what's it called, religions. And the spiritual repercussions, they're still living through it till this day. So a lot of times people want to make it like, I'm not saying, because I understand
repercussions though, because my grandmother was a voodooist all her life and nothing happened to anybody. So
what to each its own. But what my family's seen, what my friends and people who I know personally who don't get me wrong, are there people who practice voodoo and ancestral religions that are doing well in life? Yes, like you can be prospering, financially, get married, have a great marriage, but like the thing about the way, I'm not here to preach to anyone, so I'm not going to go too deep into it because this is not a pulpit and I'm not a pastor and whatever, but all I'm saying is the repercussions don't always show up in your generation. Like there are things that we see happen in people's lives today that are due to previous ancestral worship. Like the devil comes to collect. When you become, that's why in the Bible, I have to say this really quickly and then I can just jump off. In the Bible, God is after the Bible teaches us that the devil, which I believe that ancestral worship is, I'm not saying that you guys have to agree with me, but that's just my conviction and my belief. But when you are a non-Christian, whatever, like the devil mimics Christ. Christ is after generations. So he's not like, that's why he's called the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Like he is after your entire generation. He doesn't just want to save you. He wants to save your generations, right? The devil does the same thing. So let's say whatever, if you're a voodoo priest or whatever, you're not just giving yourself over to Satan, you're giving your lineage to him. That's why a lot of times when the devil doesn't want your money, he doesn't want your gold, he wants your bloodline. He's after your bloodline. So
hey, Yellow Blue, I don't think you realize how anti-black this sounds. So
I need to say something. I've been holding it in, bro.
Go ahead, you can say what's up.
Go ahead.
So a couple of things, because you said something earlier where you said like what has practicing like our old spiritual religions gotten us, but you didn't really too much elaborate on like what the bigger point of it was. But also by some of the language that you use and kind of how you talk about it, I have another question that kind of been burning in me to ask you. Do you think that what happened to Black people, because of course you bring up Ethiopia, but most of us came from like central, or South Africa, even sometimes West. But do you think that it was worth it? Like, what happened to Black people in order for us to, as a whole, convert to Christianity?
No, not at all.
So what does that mean to you? So with it not being worth it, you don't think colonialism was worth it, or slavery or chattel slavery was worth it? But in the same sentence, you would say that it was God's will for us to be converted.
I would say that the method that was used was not God's will. It was not I don't think that enslaving millions, not just enslaving, but killing and slaughtering an entire race is a method that the Lord will utilize.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Let's unpack what that means then. So would you have rather us stay with our old spiritual religions and never have founded Christianity if that means that chattel slavery would never happen? Would you rather not be a Christian right now?
I think that sorry, is it me or is it?
Yeah, we can hear you. But go ahead, Yellow.
Yeah, go ahead, Yellow.
I was going to say, I think that those of us who are meant to be Christians would have become Christians regardless. Now, what I will say is that I don't think that slavery, colonialism was worth it, because I will never approve of the method that was utilized in order for Christianity to enter these nations. However, what I will say is, who's to say, right? Like, let's be realistic, because how do we know that the ancient African religions that are not Christian, because Christianity is an African religion. We're not going to debate that now.
No, it's not.
But anyways,
it's not. Christianity is not an African religion. Y'all really need to stop doing, and don't bring up Ethiopia, because that's
okay.
I find it kind of funny because you already said that it came from the Middle East. So how could it be African if it came from the Middle East? It's kind of funny. But go ahead. I'll finish with you.
Anyways,
no, I just want to go down this like.
But I wanted to answer his question.
Like, yeah, of course. Go ahead.
So yes, I do not. I don't think that it was worth it. End of the day, like, but I will say that the Bible says, like, there are those of us who were chosen before the foundation of this world. So one way or another, I would have ended up becoming a Christian. But I also want to say, how are you sure that the African religion that your ancestors once practiced wasn't forced on them?
I'm like, ma'am, we know that it wasn't forced on them because those were their traditional practices. So those are the practices that they chose to partake in. And
but my thing is, Africa has.
Girl, no. Because you just came up here talking about Christianity was a African religion. So the reality is this, right? You're trying to, first of all, I want to unpack the reason. So you didn't think it was God's will in particular to slaughter, to the genocide, an entire race, to enslavement, all of those things. So the same question that you're applying, talking about African spirituality, that our ancestors practice, but you're not applying that to your God, though. Because here is the thing, right? In your Bible, he does slaughter entire nations and genocide entire nations. Matter of fact, he gives commandments on how to do it. So you don't get to sit here and say that's not God's plan, when in your own Bible there are literal whole instructions from it, and even to take the women after the men of those nations are conquered. That's in your Bible.
Can I also address some of the anti-blackness here? Because
Yellow, I think to address that.
I got you. So Yellow,
that's actually what I was going down the rabbit hole for.
Okay, got
I asked her some of those questions because I feel like she's being very lukewarm on it. Because really, because it's like on one end you don't agree with the method it was used, but it's like how would you have been a Christian without colonialism? But on the same coin, you condemn colonialism and imperialism and slavery. But because you can't have one without the other. And what I'm saying is, if you're going to stand on the fact that you believe Christianity wholeheartedly and you believe what we were doing pre-Christianity was demonic, then you go down that same rabbit hole of thinking the reason why Black people were punished is because they were disobedient to God.
I.e. the curse of Ham. I'm like, that a lot of
I don't hold those beliefs. And I wanted to say this, right? So in the Bible, wait, let me say this real quick, guys.
I got you.
So in the Bible, we see that the 3 continents that are brought up in the Bible, well, if you consider the Middle East a continent, whatever, just to, simplify this conversation.
It's Asia. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, anyways, not necessarily, but the Middle East, Africa, and Europe. So the places of like Ethiopia, and when the Bible, I'm not saying modern day Ethiopia, listen to me. The Ethiopia, the Ethiopia in the Bible is, so like the Africans back in biblical times, they would be called Ethiopians, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the Ethiopia in the Bible is very different than the Ethiopia we have today. Like, whatever. I'm just bringing that up.
Christianity did not originate in Ethiopia.
I haven't finished. Can I please? I'm just giving a little bit of context here before I hit my main point. I brought up Ethiopia, not modern day Ethiopia, but biblical Ethiopia, is because we see that Philip, one of the disciples, went to Ethiopia and he met an Ethiopian man, i.e. an African man, because Ethiopian, the Bible called Africans Ethiopians.
Ethiopians, yeah.
Okay, he met an African man and he shared the gospel with him. That Ethiopian man was baptized, and he went to spread it. That's how the Bible. So
that's how Ethiopia got it. So yeah, we understand that, right?
Let me finish. What I was saying,
ma'am, we've been listening to you the entire time.
But what I was saying here is that the Bible, like when I say Ethiopia, you guys are thinking, not saying everyone on this panel, but there are people who are thinking that I'm referring to modern day Ethiopia. I'm trying to say that the Ethiopia when the Bible says Ethiopia, they are referring to Africans.
Right, but Yellow,
here's the thing is, but that's irrelevant because the Christianity does not originate in the continent of Africa.
Right.
That is a fact.
So here's what I was.
In fact, there's whole historical proof that it came to Africa in the the 5th century by Europeans, specifically the Romans and the Greeks. So you can.
No, it did not. But okay.
Yes, it did.
All right, hold on, guys. Hold on. Let me just say this. So yeah, Yellow. We understand that when the Bible mentions Ethiopia, they're talking about like Africans in general, because but the things that you need to realize is that Ethiopia was the only land that they knew. That's all they knew, because Ethiopia was a very powerful land at that point. So of course they're gonna, when they see a dark-skinned person, they're gonna say Ethiopian because that's the only land that they knew. You see what I'm saying? And because of that, like I don't think just because a Bible says Ethiopia, therefore they're talking about Africa in general. They're talking about an African person. But I'm talking about Africa in general. Like Philip didn't know that Lagos existed. You know what I'm saying? So we just can't say that they're talking about, right? We can't say they're talking about Africa in general, because Johannesburg was not even a thing back then. You know what I'm saying? So we can't say that. But they're talking about an Ethiopian person. That's the only person that they know. But the second thing that I was gonna say is that the reason why I was gonna say that, Kate, mute up for me just real quick, please. The reason why I was gonna say the reason I was talking about anti-blackness is because when you talk about our spiritual practices, you mention them in a form of demonology and evilness, etc. But these religions that we had before, they gave us moral framework. We built entire civilizations around them. Even Christians who came down to Africa said, like, I think it was a letter that King Leopold wrote to the missionaries in the Congo. They said that the Africans already have a moral system. They know that stealing from a neighbor is a bad thing, and they know that because they worship a moral god, Bakanga. He admitted that, right? So to say that these are all devilish and demon people, when we already have a moral systems on how to work with, it goes down the line of what Trell was saying, that our spirituality is beneath the spirituality that white people gave us. And therefore, we're being punished in Africa is the way that it is today because of the spirituality that we were practicing. And that sneaks in. You may not be saying this, But the point sneaks in that we needed white people to save us. People say the same thing about Haiti, that Haiti is the way that it is because during the revolution, we had a voodoo ceremony in order to give us the courage to fight back against the French. And people say that we made a deal with the devil, and that's why Haiti is the way that it is today. Basically, it sneaks in the point that we were better being enslaved under the French. You see what I'm saying? So this is what I'm saying.
By the way, when you're done, can you put me on the big screen?
I got you. And this is why I say that whenever we denigrate African spirituality as demonic, it sneaks in these little anti-black tropes of the spirituality being inferior to what white people gave us, or Africa deserving and Haiti deserving what it is today, simply because we were spiritually dead or spiritually bound, or we were doing something inferior, or we're just bad people. You see what I'm saying? So this is why I always say, be careful of denigrating our own spirituality.
So you get it, right, Bosi? Because you're saying exactly the point I was going down. But to take it a step further, and what I was telling her, I'm like, listen, if that's what you wholeheartedly believe, own it, because there's no way that you can actually even, that's the only justification that they can possibly have, because you can't have one without the other, is what I'm saying. Because if you wholeheartedly condemn everything that came with Christianity to get it to black people, then you have to also accept the fact that you're willing to have lost Christianity to stop those atrocities. And you can't try to sneak in the fact.
Look at my background, right? Because she said I was lying when I said that Christianity didn't originate. Now I got the timeline wrong. It was before the 3rd and 5th century. So here you will see. I'm like, no, Christianity did not originate in Africa. I'm like, and it goes down how, and it goes down that. So I'm like, so ma'am, when since when is Christianity an African religion? Because here we can go to Google and see that it's not.
That's the white man's science.
Okay, so thank you guys. Let me respond. I never said that Christianity originated in Africa. What I said was that what I've been saying this entire time is that Christianity was exposed to the African people before the Europeans got to Africa. It's always been exposed to us. So that's not what you said. No, that's not what you said. I have been.
All right. So let's do this. Let's say that maybe you just misspoke, like the words got mixed up. That happens sometimes. So what you were trying to say is that that Africa got exposed to it before colonialism came through. Is that what you were trying to say?
Only that's what I
that's fine. Okay, we got you. That's fine.
Now to answer your other part about the anti-blackness, let me touch on the anti-blackness now. So you said, like, when did you say, like, the British or the Portuguese came, so they wrote about Africans like having moral good, whatever.
Yeah, like this was it was basically what King Leopold II was writing to the missionaries in Belgium, and he was writing to missionaries in Congo, and he was saying that the only reason to convert Africans to Christianity is that it's better for European markets to make poverty noble, because they already have morals, they already have a moral system. So he like the European people knew that we already had a moral system. We didn't need Christianity to be moral. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I'm always tell people to be very careful about denigrating our spirituality and calling it like demonic or devilish or anything like that, because it sneaks in the trope that African spirituality is an immoral or bad system, and we needed to be enslaved in order to be civilized into Christianity. And I think that's
so I'm happy you bring up Belgium. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt anyone. I just want to say this. Like, I'm happy you bring up Belgium, because I feel like when people say things like, when we talk about the spread of Christianity, I think that we have to really look at what was, you and I reckon we agree. I'm not sure if we agree, but I felt like we had some form of agreement. The fact that there were people who forced Christianity and those who spread it in a non-violent way, right?
Of course,
Africa was not Christian pre-colonialization, ma'am. Like, I don't know why you are trying to do that. Like,
okay, I'm gonna go back to the anti-blackness, because I think that's anyways. So someone like King Leopold, I wouldn't say, just from my Christian belief, King Leopold did not spread, like, whatever yes, people say, oh, he was spreading quote unquote Christianity. I see his Christianity the same way I see the KKK. Like, people weaponize God for their own wicked reasons, because King Leopold is the same person who committed.
Separate that. No.
Yes, you can.
No,
yes,
you cannot.
can.
No, because that is a cop out, and that is a cop out that y'all Christians constantly do. It is the whole argument that it's not God, it's the people, despite the fact that you all believe that your God is omnibenevolent and never changes. So your God is absolutely responsible for that. You do not get to absolve your religion. No.
Wait, you know what? This is what I'll say.
I just want to answer the anti-Semitism part. Let me just finish that. But anyway,
you mean anti-blackness?
So the whole,
I was
anti-blackness. Sorry,
I'm sorry, Yellow. Can you pause for me real quick, because Terry has been up here for almost an hour and they haven't been able to say anything yet. Do you mind if I just ask them one thing and I'm gonna get back to you? Okay, give me 1 second. Terry, are you still there? You can come off mute, Terry. Okay, we'll go
Terry on mute request.
Okay,
what I was going to say, because I can't condemn Yellow Blue or say anything, but Yellow Blue, to your point, what you were saying, when you say you separate them, okay, if you separate them, would you say there is any interpretation in the Bible that could justify what King Leopold did? If you say so, there's none. There's no justification. There's no interpretation. There's no way you could look at the scriptures. There's no scripture that could substantiate what King Leopold did biblically.
No. Do you know why there's none? Because there were Christians who, it was also Christians who, and mind you, these were European Christians who spoke out against what the other Europeans were doing.
The religion
That's
of
not,
the things it
but
did.
wouldn't that be an interpretation difference?
Because the Bible is up to, what Trail is saying, it's up to interpretation. So the idea that there were some Christians that that spoke out against it. There were also some Christians that spoke out against the transatlantic slave trade. That does not mean that Christianity and Christians do not have a role to play in the transatlantic slave trade. Christians have been responsible for many atrocities across history. We could talk about the Spanish Inquisition. We could talk about those residential schools in Canada with those indigenous children, the transatlantic slave trade. And even in modern day, let's not get into how y'all persecute the LGBTQ community. Y'all institutions definitely do that, and women. So let's not be oblivious. This is the typical Christian BS where they want to absolve themselves of any type of accountability.
So my thing about this is, right, okay, so we can sit here and, because I'm not, like I said, I'm not here to try to proselytize anyone. That's not my business. But what I'm trying to say here is, like, we can all, so you guys are fine recognizing, which as you should, you guys recognize the atrocities that you believe the Christians have committed throughout society, right? Mm-hmm. So why is it? Okay, so why is it, right, that the same Christians that are wicked and evil and slaughtered and did all these things, aren't these the same Christians that go into North Korea? Like, literally, you can fact check me, that go into North Korea to literally help other people in North Korea, whether they're Christian, non-Christian, doesn't matter. There are Christian missionaries right now who leave their comfortable life in the West, go to North Korea, sneak into North Korea, and help people escape.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I don't think anyone denies. I don't think anyone denies that there are individual Christian people out there that go out there and do great things. I don't think anyone denies that there are Christian organizations that go out there and do great things. My mother right now is in Santo Domingo. Yeah, I mean, I don't want her to be there because I don't trust the Dominican Republic. Yeah, I mean, but she's there right now in order to help the Haitians out there that are living, that are suffering there. Yeah, there are Christians who do great and wonderful things around the world. No one denies that. Just like there are Muslims who do the same thing. Red Cross, Red Crescent is a thing. There are atheists who do the same thing. I feed the homeless every Thanksgiving. You know what I'm saying? And I'm an atheist.
But I want to say
so we do that. So let me just say that. Let me just say this. Like, we get that there are Christians who do great things. No one denies that. What we're trying to say is that one of the most destructive forces, or I would say the most destructive force on the planet, was colonization and white supremacy. And those were tools that drove Christianity all around the world. And the white-led Christianity was the most destructive thing that ever happened to the continent of Africa and ever happened to the planet, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? So we can't simply absolve it by saying, oh, well, there are Christians who did nice things. No, Christian colonialism and colonized, like missionaries, we will even say, are part of colonialism, has wrought damage across the planet. And we just can't absolve that by saying, oh, well, my mom went to Honduras and fed homeless people.
But we also have to recognize, like, right, during those times when these atrocities are being committed, who were the people actively fighting against and screaming to the world, these people are killing and destroying? These were also Christians. So as the thing about the world likes to highlight that during colonialism, like we're not absolving these people for what they did. But during that time, there were Christians as well who fought against the civil, like even down to like freaking the Civil War in America. Like it was Christians, it were white Christians American who fought their own white Christian counterparts. Yeah. So like that's the thing. We can't sit here just as when those people who claim to be Christians, and just for simplicity and just for neutrality, let's say they were Christians because they identified as Christians, right? There were also millions of other Christians who fought against it. So why is it, right, that we want to judge Christianity based off of those ones, but for some reason, history is very silent about the Christians who died protecting and making, like, you know, just announcing to the world, hey, these people, not just any people, but they were willing to go against their own brothers and sisters.
But history,
because of their Christian values.
History isn't silent. People say that all the time, that white people fought and died for black people in order to free the slaves. People say that all the time. You know what I mean? Because even in that what you're talking about right now, that still operates under the lens of white supremacy, because they will automatically say white people ended slavery, white people ended colonialism, white people freed the slaves, et cetera, et cetera. You know what I'm saying? Like the history's not silent about it.
I do want to get to the point of the mission.
Real quick, I just want to address something real quick. She was saying.
Go ahead.
Basically, I do want to answer her question. I think the issue is that people like to pick and choose what they want affiliated with their religion, right? Like they're all fine with, oh yeah, look at all this. See, some bad stuff happen, but look at all this good stuff happen. We're like, no, like if you're gonna take the good, you also gotta take the bad. But the reality is, it is neither. Like religions do not influence. Well, sorry, I want to read that. Like religion can influence people. Like, religion can influence people to do great good and great evil, right? But you don't need either of them at all to do either or. Like again, like there are atheists who do things that are good and evil, right? There are people who do things who may have religion, but they wouldn't say that their religion influenced them to do it. No, like literally, like just living influenced them to do whatever they did. So like the reality is, humans have the capacity to do either or, and we don't need a religion to influence us to do it. So
but Trill, I would agree
to attach your religion to your actions. The reality is, like, it's not attached at all. You never needed a religion to convince you to do great good or great evil. You wanted to do it because you wanted to do it. So why even
Trill, that's the only part I would
necessary.
disagree with. That's the only part I disagree with, because yes, people can choose. Choose to do good and evil, and it doesn't necessarily have to be attributed to religion. However, in this case, it is. Right, because here's the thing.
We can get into the specifics. Hold
on, Trill. Let me just get this off. Right, in this case, it is though, because here is the thing. They are trying to remove the religion from any type of accountability. The institution of Christianity is white supremacist. It is misogynistic, and it is problematic at its core, and that cannot be removed from the religion. It cannot. The religion is built off the foundation of the religious text, and the people are following it. Now, what y'all can argue interpretation, Y'all can argue, but they are absolutely following the Bible, and that Bible is absolutely influencing their decisions. It is the religion. When they were going to, when they overturned Roe v. Wade, that was not a medical decision. That was Christian institutions
decision.
getting into politics and try to fuck with women's rights. That's what they were doing, right? When they were rallying in the 2010s against gay marriage, they were doing that because the religion said that homosexuality was an abomination, and they did that under the guise of Christianity. That is what they did. They said that. I'm like, so again, this cannot be removed from the context of religion and the Christian institution, which is at its core problematic.
But Kay, the only thing I disagree with that, I'm sorry, is that they would have done that regardless. Like the whole point of white supremacy.
But they don't get. But the difference is they can remove accountability.
Hold on, guys. Hold on. Here's what I'll say. Here's what I would say, right? Because I think I can get to like the crux of what you guys are saying. Without religion, good people will still be good people, and bad people will be bad people without religion. However, it takes religion for otherwise well-meaning and well-assuming people in order to support horrible things, right? So without this religion existing, would normal everyday people still be supporting, you know, anti-LGBTQ rights and anti women's reproductive rights? For a lot of people, I don't think they would. For a lot of people, I don't think they would. Now, there still would be people who do that. Yeah, sure. There still would be people who do that.
Without religion, right? Are you referring to the Abrahamic faiths, or are you speaking as religion as a whole?
Any and all religion.
I believe it's all, but it's especially the Abrahamic faith,
especially the Abrahamic, especially in the West.
Well, I will say this, right? Let me say this. I think it's interesting we bring that up because there is, as an African myself, the African part of, like, I'm not going to say African culture because our cultures do vary, you know, ethnic group to ethnic group. But my particular, like, the ethnic groups, majority of the ethnic groups within the modern day Nigerian nation our ancestral culture has always been homophobic. It's always been like, I mean, I'm Nigerian myself, man.
I know you may be Nigerian. I'm not taking away the fact that, but here is the thing. But no, because I've read on it, and I know for a fact what you're saying is not true. Because the reality is this: that is being the reason that they're homophobic is not because of their ancestral beliefs, but because of British institutions coming into Nigeria and other parts, actually Christian missionaries, by the way, instituting anti-gay laws in there. So that is not true. That in pre-colonial Africa, they were not homophobic. In fact, there are whole books on it.
Yeah, as far as what I've read, a lot of pre-colonial Africa was more ambivalent, or they didn't really have a word for it because it was so rare. You know what I mean? So it was more dealt with ambivalence. Now, does that mean that, you know, there were no homophobia in Africa? Of course, there was homophobia. You know what I mean? Everywhere had homophobia. Like even China did. You know what I mean? Back in those days. But like, was it as intense as it is right now? Highly doubted. Now, you're Nigerian, Yellow, so maybe you can tell us, in pre-colonial Africa, was it as intensely homophobic as it is today, or was it simply more ambivalent?
I won't say it was ambivalent, but I will say that that my particular ethnic group has a history of being
What's
against.
Your ethnic group?
I'm Igbo.
Igbo, yeah. Igbo, yeah.
And then also I want to say my ethnic group as well. We have we literally, and I tell you, we just stopped this within this was even happening in the early 1900s. Our ancestral beliefs, we thought the twins were abomination. So when women would have twins, we would kill one of the other.
Yeah, no, of course. No, they were,
and that's because of our religious beliefs.
No, of course. Like we get that, right? There were a lot of no one's saying that African traditional religion was perfect. I want to make that clear. I'm not saying that African traditional religion was perfect, right? There was still a lot of things that they did wrong and they got wrong, because religions that just tends to happen with religion, period. You know what I mean? But I don't believe that that conversion to Christianity was necessary in order to stop killing twins, or was necessary in order to stop being homophobic. right? Like they shouldn't be homophobic at all. They shouldn't kill twins at all. I think the Igbo people could have kept their traditional religion and stopped killing twins and stop being homophobic or not be homophobic. Now, I believe you. Like the Igbo people, even pre-colonial Africa, were pretty homophobic. That's true.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't deny that. But at the end of the day, I think right now it's intensely so, and it's so intensely so that what will happen if an Igbo person comes out as gay? I think people will kill him.
He would, yes, he would kill. And I will
exactly,
say this,
and that's an issue. That's a big problem. Was that happening? Now, of course, it was homophobic before pre-colonial, but did they kill him because he was gay?
I'm like, hold on, Boasty, can you put me on the big screen?
Yeah. Now, remember, Kay, she was talking about specifically about the Igbo people.
And I put in the Igbo people. So I asked, so I asked Google, in pre-colonial Africa, was the Igbo people of Nigeria homophobic? And it's I'm like, and we have it right here. No, they were not homophobic, and I'm like in the modern sense, because I'm like the gender and sexuality with the Igbo people were fluid pre-colonialization. So that absolutely debunks what you're saying.
You're trying to tell me that my ethnic group, right?
I am telling you, I'm like, what is here? The literature is literally here.
So it says the pre-colonial Igbo society was not homophobic in the modern sense.
Mm-hmm.
So now what does the modern sense of homophobia mean? Because if your modern sense of homophobia, like, think about it. You're asking, when I tell you that the Igbo people are homophobic, I'm literally saying that the practice, like, you wouldn't see a society that encourages a woman and another woman, or a man another man. I see what you're saying, the women to women marriages, but the way we see women to women marriages then, and sorry.
Oh no, that's my DoorDash.
Keep going.
The way we see women to women marriages then and now are not the same thing. And it's like, okay, for example, I'm happy she brought this up because I was actually going to touch on this. In ancient Igbo times, right, the children children would be referred to as, so like now, obviously in modern times, we take our father's last name, most people, right? But back, because usually obviously this is due to Christian. Yeah, exactly. So
I do know that Igbos were matrilineal. I have read that, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like when people say Igbo people would take a wife. Okay, for example, right now, if my cousin or my brother were to marry a woman, according to the way Igbos, we see like, oh, that's our wife. Like, let's say me and the host, if he was my brother and he was Igbo and he has a wife, we would refer to his wife as our wife. I'm like, oh, that's our wife. Like, that's how we see it in Igbo culture. So like when we say so my thing is, without context, you'd be like, oh, that's weird. Why should call another woman her wife? But what you don't realize is in the cultural context, for the Igbo people, a woman who is married, when a woman is married into your family, she's not your brother's wife, she's also your wife. It doesn't mean I'm sleeping with her, but I recognize that, like, because we see, even for example, right now, if I have a daughter, even my uncles, my aunts, even like people who are not blood related to me, but because
we know that Black people are communal.
Exactly.
That's not the conversation. The conversation was the claim that I'm like, in this case, that I'm like, the Igbo people were homophobic pre-colonialization. That was the claim.
Yes,
what I am telling you is that I'm like, it's not just woman to woman. It literally says that I'm like, the Igbo people did not have a strict binary as it relates to sexuality and gender as it tied to biological sex pre-colonialization. That is what it says. I'm literally telling you what the literature says. And it's not just the sense of woman to woman marriages. What it's saying is that homosexuality as well as gender was not viewed in the same way pre-colonialization. That is what it's saying.
Right. So that's what I'm trying to. I'm not. I'll good. That's what I'm trying to understand better when it comes to the. Just to make it clear, y'all, we've been on this for almost an hour, and this was about politics tonight, not even about Christianity, but it's all good and well. The conversations go to where they go to. All right, so it's all good and well. So tomorrow, let's keep it on politics. All right, guys, keep it on politics tomorrow. But That's what I wanted
Can
to
we even
understand.
have a conversation about politics in this country without mentioning
Religion coming in,
Can
yeah,
we really?
exactly, yeah. Can we really? You ain't lying. But what I wanted to understand, Yellow, is that yeah, we understand that these wife-to-wife things were about securing lineage and everything like that. But what I remember what I asked in pre-colonial Africa, if there in pre-colonial Igbo land, right, and Biafra, if there was a gay person, would that person be killed or oppressed or kicked out the village or the town or whatever, or would they treat him more with ambivalence, or treat her more with ambivalence, or treat them more with ambivalence? Because nowadays we see rapid hatred, criminalization, violence. That's what we see today, right? But you said that they weren't homophobic in the modern sense. So in their sense, what was that sense? Was it rapid hatred and criminalization,
Now that
or
is
was
what the
it
question is.
exactly, or was it all right, he's a weirdo, but whatever? Well, which one was it in pre-colonial times?
I would say it was I would say they were, when it comes to same sex, it wasn't a supported practice, but I don't think that they would, how do I put this? Like,
They would hurt
I think
them.
it depends on the time period you meet them. I'm talking about pre-Europeans, right? I'm talking about pre-Europeans, because
can I get another clarification? When you say that it wasn't a supported practice, what exactly does that mean? Because
it means that when we do see gender fluidity in the Igbo ethnic group, it would be during, like, let's say a woman has lost her husband, and so in order for her to have a family.
So wait, hold on, Yellow. I'm not asking about that, right? When you say that it's not a supported practice, what exactly do we mean by that? Because it's like,
it means
if a person
that
is,
when you were,
if a person is, if like for example, right? If a person is gay, for me, they're just gay. It's whatever. So when people say, "Oh, you're supporting the practice," I'm like, "What do you mean by that?" I'm not telling a little kid to go out there and find a boyfriend. So it's like, when we say that it's not a supported practice, what does that sentence mean? Like me, if a person's LGBTQ, there's LGBTQ. It's whatever. But we're not telling little Susie to go find herself a girlfriend. No one's doing that. So what do we mean when we say it's not a supported practice or a supported practice?
When I say it's not a supported practice, so will I say that I'm not going to say that they were killed in masses? No, I'm not saying that they were, but I'm not also going to sit here and say that and confirm that, yes, the Igbo people never had any, like, they never, what's it called? That the Igbo people never, I don't want to say hurt, but for lack of better words, that people who lived in same sex were completely safe during that time, because they weren't. Like, just like I said to you, there were twins. Like, think about it. This is a culture that once believed in the killing of twins. And then also keep in mind that, yes, we were also like, so it's not that every single homosexual person was killed, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that there wasn't a time where it doesn't mean that they were protected either. That's what I'm trying to say. Like,
right. It's more ambivalence. Yeah, I mean, and that I think that's the kind of point that we're trying to bring up. Like, it's like people probably knew that he or she was that way, but no one went out their way to hurt them. Nowadays, people are going out their way to hurt them, and that came in with Christianity.
Actually, let me say this. I think that, so why is it, right, that the Western world, as Africans, we see the Western world as the place that promotes homosexuality? And keep in mind, you guys are saying Europeans are white man's religion. So why is it that the Europeans are the same ones who we believe are, like, when we think of, and not just an African concept, but even the Caribbeans as well. There's a whole documentary about this in Jamaica
too. Yeah, and Haiti.
When
there too.
The homosexuals, I mean, people in LGBTQ lifestyle, they flee to the West for safety.
Yes.
The West has more Christians, so they find refuge in predominantly Christian nations as gay people versus in their African.
Because as we said, Christianity
not
doesn't
change
rule.
the fact.
Wait, let me just answer this.
But LGBTQ people in the Western world have been
and LGBT.
Wait,
ma'am, LGBTQ
hold on,
people more safer.
Yellow. Yes, LGBTQ people are more safer here, but that's because religion doesn't rule the governance. In Africa, it does. Like the reason why these laws exist in Uganda and Senegal and all these other places is because the religion demands it. Yeah, I mean, over here, if a person, like nowadays, back in the 60s, it was this way, but nowadays, if a person says, I'm gonna put a bill through Congress to make being gay illegal because the Bible said so, he's gonna get kicked out of Congress, or no one's gonna take that bill seriously. But over in Africa, they take the bill seriously because the Bible, the Quran says so. The religion rules the government. Here in the West, it doesn't. That's why. I'm not sure if she heard me because she's on Teacup.
No, I'm hearing you. I'm just on.
Right. So like well, that's the reason why the religion doesn't rule the government over here. But like at least now, at least for the past 40 years, the religion doesn't rule the government. But over in Africa, that's what y'all. I'm not gonna say that's what I don't want to other people, but that's what happens on the continent. The religions or the Quran or the Bible says this, therefore we're gonna make it illegal, and therefore, I think that it's kind of funny to me because it's over in Africa. They said that the West and the white people are trying to bring homosexuality to Africa as if that it never existed before white people came to the continent. Like homosexuality existed everywhere. Like it's not, Africans are not immune to homosexuality. You know what I'm saying?
It's not that they're immune, but it's our history. Like I don't want to speak for every single, because there are 3,000 ethnic groups in the African continent. So I'm not going to speak for 3,000. No, but I do come from one of the oldest ethnic groups in this world, and it's not that. So the difference between like you're right. Homosexuality existed everywhere. It's not just unique to the European race. However, what I'm trying to say here is that the Europeans have when you look at their history, right, they have been more open to homosexuality. They the slave masters would once, unfortunately, sexually assault slaves. Europeans have a.
Yeah, we get that, right? We understand that, right? They've been more open to it. All that is good and well. But what we're saying is that what we see in Africa right now with the homophobia, where people go out their way to hurt these people, that didn't happen until the Europeans came and they had that type of attitude towards homosexuals as well. And they made those laws in their colonies in Africa. And then when they left Africa, y'all still kept the same laws. That's what we're saying. That entire attitude of these people need to die, that didn't come in until Europeans. Europeans gave that an ideology. That didn't come from Africa itself.
I'm gonna disagree. I'm gonna agree to disagree on that. The reason why I say that is because are there certain practices that none that I can think of right now, but there are a lot of practices that we see in the African continent today that have always been around before the Europeans came into the land. Like slavery has been in existence. Like obviously before it wasn't, because we would trade people due to okay, you're from a different ethnic group or whatever. Like slavery has always been a thing. We've waged wars with each other. When we waged war with let's say, I'm just giving an example, it's not a real war, but let's say the Igbos went against the Hausas. If the Igbos won, the Hausas will then adopt whatever, ancient religion.
Yeah, of course.
Exactly. So it's this isn't, so what we see in the African continent isn't because, and I think that's what I'm really trying to emphasize here is that I don't like when people sometimes, I'm not saying this is what you're doing, but I think that people do this unknowingly sometimes, is they attribute the current behavior of modern Africans to Europeans. No, these behaviors has always been in existence. Before.
No, I agree, right? Like people are complicated. I'm not gonna sit here and say that Africa was Wakanda before the Europeans came in. There was complexity, there was war, there was mess. Of course, all that happened. There were cruel people. Yeah, of course, it would be ridiculous to say that Africa was this picture perfect place before Europeans came. I think it was better. it was way better before Europeans came. I think there were advances in Africa before Europeans came. You know what I mean? So what I'm trying to say is that when we're talking about the entire issue of homophobia, there's nothing that we can find in any literature or any historical, as far as what we can see with Africa in any archaeological or any historical record that we can find a pre-colonial Africa of people going out of their way to harm homosexual people. We can't find that in there. But nowadays, nowadays, after Europeans came in, now we see that there's people who are going out of their way to harm homosexual people. We can't really find that in pre-colonial Africa. So the only like logical thing to deduce is that this came in with Europeans, because Europeans had that same attitude during the Middle Ages to go out their way to harm homosexual people. They already had that in their nations. Now they moved past it. It's really us who haven't. You know what I mean? Like, we haven't moved past of going out of our way to harm them. You know what I mean? And from what we can find in pre-colonial Africa, even if societies were homophobic, they didn't go out their way to harm someone who was homosexual.
And I can say this. I can say this as a Black American. This is all across the diaspora. This is an issue. But the thing, but also, so is misogynoir. Like, all of these things are extremely problematic in their issues. And I do believe Christianity intensifies them. And I feel like we're in denial by denying that.
Well, I would say I don't think that Christianity, because in order for Christianity to intensify it, we would need the host. You just brought up, you said that, okay, the Europeans moved past it, we didn't. But my thing about this is, I wouldn't even say, because right now there are Christians, I'm a Christian who's African, who is against the killing of people who are like anyone, whether LGBTQ, like, I don't think that the way to, like, it's not, I don't believe that you should be in jail or you should be killed because of your, because of your sexual, proclivities. However, what I will say is, I don't support it 100%. I stand on that. Like, it is what it is. But there are millions of Christians who are against it, who are in African nations, who are saying, like, no, like, we don't support it, but we don't think that they should be killed. But we're not going to sit here and we're not going to give you a Pride Month like they do in America. We're not doing that. But we are also, because for a person to sit there, right, and say, because even think about it right now.
Like you're being disingenuous.
Let me ask you a question.
Let me say this, right, because to say that, no, because we also, because I think that, let me say this. I think that the West does a really great job of painting the African continent to make it seem like, oh, we are just slaughtering people. Because right now there are people who are gay, and yes, obviously we have laws that are implemented that says, if you are caught in a homosexual act, you will be jailed for 20-something years. But there are gay people who are freely running around, who are not enslaved. There are, like, right, any African, or particularly West African, there's a famous gay man called Bobrisky. Very famous, and not just like, he was like wig, hair, makeup, and he is like legit famous in not just in Nigeria, all of West Africa. So anyways, I say all that because even, for example, like Islam, right? Nigeria is half Christian, half Muslims. The people have heard about, like, the Islamic terrorism happening in northern Nigeria, but guess what? It's also Christians who are going to the north to help not just Christians, but Muslims as well. So I'm saying this is because people make it seem like, yes, we see these laws, but you don't see Christians calling the police and saying, hey, there's this gay guy, come get him. No, we don't do that. I'm not sitting here and going to deny that we do have several instances, to be honest, of gay people being killed in the African continent. Yes, but there are also Christians who are protecting them as well. We have, like, I can.
So the story is complicated on the ground. We get that. We get the story is complicated on the ground.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
No, we understand that. We get the story is complicated on the ground. What we're trying to say, what I was trying to ask before is that, why do you think Pride Month exists in America? Why do you think that's even a thing?
Because America supports LGBTQ lifestyles. No. Okay, why?
It's because of oppression.
If you say so.
Did you grow up in America?
I'm like, do you know what Pride Month?
Okay, so do you know who Matthew Shepard was?
No, I'm not familiar with him.
Matthew Shepard was was a gay kid who went into a bar and his classmates killed him because he was gay. We created an entire law around it, the Matthew Shepard law, where hate crimes were created, where that if you killed someone because of an immutable characteristic, you got a hate crime enhancer where it became even more criminal. Like Pride Month exists because of Pride Month exists because back in the 60s, when there were like, you know, bathhouses and clubs that LGBTQ people can go to, the police will constantly harass them. Look up the Stonewall riots, right? Or was it Stonewall by it was started by Marsha P. Johnson. Stonewall riots, right?
Stonewall riots.
The Stonewall riot,
and
exactly.
that was the only one, but there were multiple.
There were multiple.
Yes,
you know what I'm saying?
And
there were laws against being LGBTQ in the South and all over America, where there were sodomy laws, where even the act of homosexual acts were completely illegalized. People went to jail.
Mind you,
just
they're
like
still
how
on the books, but a lot of states are still on the books. It's just that the federal government federal government trumps state, right? So let's say hypothetically that they were to do what they did with Roe v. Wade and return that to the state. They actually can bring sodomy laws back.
Exactly.
Because they're still on the legal books in many different states, from my knowledge.
Exactly. So the reason why Pride Month exists is because of the oppression all these people face. Would you not say that having a law against being who you are